State IPM Conference. This is the sixth annual conference that our program has organized. The theme varies each year, and this year we have chosen the theme of school IPM. Of course, what's unusual about this year is that the conference is virtual, split into 2 half days. Few more logistics. The chat box is where you enter any questions that you have for speakers or concerns about procedures. And later you will receive for those of you who are certified applicators and have registered as such, you will receive after the conference at a later date, your DEC certificates for both dates. They are separate for the 2 dates. And also we have a certificate from our program of participation. And if you fill out the evaluation, which you will also be sent after the conference, you will get a FIT tool. Both days of the conference are being recorded, and they will end up on the New York State IPM website. After we have to caption them first, that's required. That'll take a while. Possibly by the end of October, they'll be on the website. The breakout groups today will not be recorded. Slides going here. Okay, this is the slide which was shown last week, and just want to recap some highlights from last week. And we started with a presentation by our new director of the IPM program, Alejandro Calixto, and he gave an excellent quick summary of the history of integrated pest management. And then looking toward where we are now, I discussed that the diversity is a strength for IPM. The communities of people that we work with, our stakeholders, are increasingly diverse in many ways. And also the people who work for us in a variety of contexts and are often on the front lines of pest problems come from diverse backgrounds. So it's increasingly important that for a successful IPM, which involves collaboration, communication, that we create respective relationships. And part of that, of course, is recognizing that cultural diversity is a strength from which we can draw for pest management. And then he summarized with several take-home messages where IPM, both in the agricultural and urban areas, are going or need to go. And again, an emphasis there on that diversity is a strength for, we should view it as a strength for the adoption of IPM. Then our keynote speaker last week, and for the whole conference, was Dr. Lorraine Maxwell, emeritus professor from Cornell University. Her area of research has been how school buildings, the physical plant, impact student outcomes, and the title of our presentation was Healthy Environments for Learning. This is her outline of why the physical environment of schools is important and the psychological processes related to learning, including particularly the relationship to building design and quality, and the outcomes, including student perceptions and the relationship with building conditions. And again, these, plus all the presentations, will be available, the recordings of these will be available. She referred to a collection of research which indicated that the quality of school buildings is able to predict academic performance of students and attendance, but both elementary and secondary schools. And then she looked at her comprehensive research, which dealt with a large number of middle schools in New York City, where she investigated the role of school building condition in student attendance and academic achievement. Her summary of that New York City study was that students' perception of the schools social learning environment is in part shaped by the physical quality of the building. And the social learning environment affects the student attendance and also academic achievement. And demographic factors do play a role, but school building quality still is an important contributing factor to the learning environment. So our main take-home message again was the physical environment of schools matters, and that is a very important context for which we apply pest management within schools. We then had a series of 4 presentations under the theme of the status of school IPM in New York State within schools within New York State. I gave the results of both formal and informal surveys over the last 20 years that our program, partnering with many others, has done. And these were the take-home points that I drove from those surveys: that the use of minimum risk pesticides is increasing by schools and should be kept track of and assisted with that. Food in non-cafeteria locations seems to be a problematic situation. Most schools do not have a pest management advisory committee. Chapter 85 implementation and associated with that is assistance in turf and grounds management is an issue for many school districts in the state. Geese are an increasing problem for New York State schools. There's been a significant drop in school staff which are certified applicators. What's the impact of that? And also that there is interest in cooperative bids and services for pest management related services and equipment, and for the development of webinars. The next presentation in this session was by Daryl Andreas within the New York State Department of Education, describing the regulations relative to pest management that SED is responsible for. She referred to the New York State Board of Regents Bill of Rights for Children, which includes a statement that every child has a right to an environmentally safe and healthy environment, which is clean and good repair, plus a right to know about this. She spent quite a bit of time with all the details of the commissioner's regulations. I'm not going through all those slides, of course, but that emphasizing, of course, that the key point that IPM has within those regulations. And then our 2 major state laws, which SED has responsibility for administering: the Child Safe Playing Field Act and the Pesticide Notification Act. Finally, she's talked about SED's Green Ribbon Schools program, plus the URL and other contacts there where to find out more information about that program. The third presentation in this session was by Claire Barnett, the Executive Director of the Healthy Schools Network, and the title of her presentation was Pesticides in Schools in New York State, What's in Place and What's Next in the Pandemic Era. And she emphasized that children are not just little adults, and that needs to be kept in mind, bulk of research supporting that, as well that schools are just not little offices. And she provided a list of resources which Healthy Schools recommends for learning more about maintaining a healthy school for your children and staff. The final presentation in that session was by Fred Coble, Director of Facilities at Port Jefferson School District. Some of his highlights was that communication is important, and don't assume that you are always communicating. What you say may not be what your audience hears. Talked about the impact from the last 10 to 20 years of various state activities on his role as a school facilities manager. And that, of course, the journey continues, both in needs of communication, unanticipated changes in our social environment, such as COVID-19, increasing public use of school buildings, and making use of teachable moments. So that's a quick overview of where we have been in the with the first half of our conference. Looking toward today, we will start off with a virtual tabling event, which I will explain shortly what we mean by that. And then we will have 3 presentations under the session entitled What We're Doing, Community Interventions. And those are really kind of priming the pump, if you will, for our breakout groups. Notice I have in bold print that we have moved the break due to popular demand from last week to earlier in the day. And so the break now, instead of after our 3 speakers during the What We're Doing Community Interventions session, will be before Bobby Corrigan, the 3rd speaker. So that break will be from 10:45 to 11, a change in the agenda. The bios of these 3 speakers, plus the speakers from last week, will be, if they're not already, on the conference website. So let me describe a little bit this virtual tabling event. And looks like I'm not taking as much time as I anticipated I would in the welcome, so we can have some more time with the tabling event for times of questions, because we have a full slate of 8 presenters. If this was a face-to-face meeting, as we originally were planning in April, we had offered partners tables to be out in the halls and adjacent rooms where they could show their wares and describe their services that they provide schools, especially related to pest management in school. In lieu of that, we are going to try a virtual tabling event, speed tabling, if you will. And so we have 8 presenters, and they will, each presenter will have 5 minutes, and their slides are timed, to describe what their organization offers schools, again, particularly associated with IPM in schools. Any questions that you have for the presenters, enter in the chat box. Those will not be addressed during the individual presentations, but in the time which we have afterwards before we enter into the speaker session.